The little boy's life was heartbreaking. He and his father had no place to go but the public restroom of a subway station. The father lined the cold tile floor with toilet paper and, when an angry fist banged on the door along with curses from outside, he pressed his leg against it, holding it shut, and cupped his hands firmly over his son's ears. The man who had always been so strong could no longer hide his tears. The next day, Chris went to work with his entire life packed into a couple of bags. After his shift, he picked up his son and headed to a community organization for help, only to find they only accepted women and children. Someone told him about a shelter that might take them in. Chris hurried there with his boy, only to find the street outside packed with people. The economic crisis had driven many into homelessness, and crowds now lived in line, hoping to be taken in. Suddenly, the staff announced that only 4 spots were left. Chris turned and saw a man cutting in line. When he tried to reason with him, the man punched him. His son, terrified, screamed from the sidelines. The shelter worker told them both to leave, but thanks to a bystander vouching for him, Chris and his boy were given beds for the night. After tucking his son in, Chris sat in the hallway with the broken medical device he'd been trying to repair, working under the dim stairwell light. The next morning, he used that same light to study before heading to work. Because beds weren't permanent, Chris carried all their belongings to the office every day. After work, he'd pick up his son and rush to the shelter to fight for a spot again. One evening, while hurrying for the bus, his son dropped his only toy, but there was no time to go back. During meals, Chris never stopped reading. He refused to waste a single moment he could spend learning. Soon, the intern's final qualification exam arrived. Chris rushed through his answers, then went straight to pick up his boy. In the elevator, he ran into a colleague who had finished early. Chris asked what he thought of the chart questions. The man, a gifted student, said they were very easy, which made Chris worry because it had been the essay questions at the end that had stumped him. Suddenly, the colleague's face changed. He bolted from the elevator. On the stairs, they ran into the company's boss, who said his own wallet was upstairs and asked Chris for bus fare. Chris glanced at his nearly empty wallet. That little money meant food, shelter, survival, but in the end, he still handed it over. With barely anything left, Chris went to the hospital to sell his blood, using the money to buy the parts he needed for the machine. That night, they again lined up at the shelter for beds. His son suddenly asked in a small voice, "Did Mom leave because of me?" Chris pulled him close and said gently, "This has nothing to do with you." When his son fell asleep, Chris went back to work on the machine. With trembling hands, he flipped the switch and a warm beam of light flooded the room. He had fixed it.